Scotty Elcon with Silk Film News. We're here at the Dallas International Film Festival with the filmmaker behind 44 Pages.
Hi, I am Tony Shaff. I'm the director of 44 Pages. I'm very excited to be here in Dallas.
So I've got to start with, I didn't realize Highlights was still connected to the family, the original family, and that was so amazing to see that journey of where it's been these last 70 years. Were you totally familiar with it, or how did you kind of get attached to this?
Yeah, I hadn't seen the magazine, probably in 30 years. I had no idea what the story was behind it. The last I saw it, I was an 8-year-old, and I just was like sort of entrenched in the puzzles and the science pieces or whatever. So it was most definitely I was going in very curious. I just didn't know, what this magazine was all about. I knew it was a pop culture phenomena. I knew that, everyone knew what Highlights was. But having not seen it in 30 years and picking it up, I was like, well, how does this still exist? And like you say, it's a family-run business, and it's been run by that family for 70 years. So how can they manage to do that? I think in this sort of day and age, there's not many of those family-run businesses that remain. And to have something successful like Highlights, it's pretty phenomenal.
So who was the first person you actually got connected with?
I just kind of made a blind call to their corporate offices, and then they connected me with the editor-in-chief, who's actually in the film.
Yeah.
She called, and we had a conversation. It didn't really seem like they wanted to include me in their story, basically. I wanted to tell a story about them, but they were not very interested in making a film. I'd say they're pretty humble people. Mm. They're people that are not really self-promotional. So when they didn't want to have a camera crew following them around. But ultimately, I told them that it was, I think that we built some trust with each other, and it, cut to a year and a half later. So
I would definitely say so, because you do get in with them, and there's even, emotional moments of when the people move on. Like I was amazed at how much we did get to know the team behind it. How did you break the ice? Like, was there a moment when everyone kind of clicked and like, okay, we're fully on board, or was it just gradual? They just kept like, giving you a little bit more access and a little bit more time?
Yeah, I think part of it for me is that I actually was just genuinely interested in the work that they were doing. And I think that I think just talking with people and actually having that interest and kind of relating to them as a creative person and their creative people, and kind of figuring out the process of how I do my job and how they do their job, I think that there's just a mutual respect there then. So we were able to, also kind of goofing off a little bit when the cameras weren't rolling, just so that, it's like we're humans, we're all humans. So it's kind of nice to be able to see them in their work environment. And then they most definitely, they opened up, and I sort of became a fixture there for the 9 months I was filming, just popping up during their meetings and popping up, they're like, oh, Tony's here again with the camera. So, but yeah, I think that it definitely, some more of the emotional stuff that happens in the film, I think it was emotional for me too, because I was experiencing it right along with them. So
I was amazed at not only the fact we get to get the history of the family and we get that journey, but the amount of material that they still have and the way they keep their records in particular. I was amazed at just how much material they have from children, the letters, the artwork, just all the ideas of what they can do and how they create the highlights. It could be from 4 or 5 years ago that they find something. That must have been fun to see, just that wealth of material that they have.
Yeah, no, it was definitely exciting. I had access to every single issue ever published. So it was cool to go through it all. I think it was a little overwhelming at times too. It's like, how do these images best represent some of the themes I'm dealing with in the film? And but then also there's this whole other archive of every single letter ever written to kids that's up at Ohio State University. Which I think is just crazy. But they're looking at these letters as being potentially like some sort of, almost like archaeological, study at some point, where they're looking at how kids write and what kind of things, the kind of topics they talk about. So, beyond Highlights, I think that there's a lot of stuff in the film is sort of looking at the state of kids today. And I'm very fascinated by technology and how things have moved on from some more of the analog things. But it's fascinating that a company, again, that can thrive in a pretty analog way. Like you saw in the film, there's just like file cabinets full of all these stories that they have, and I'm sure they have some more technology in their computer systems, but it's nice that they're working in this analog medium, and still very much capturing an audience of kids.
And yet they're also fully aware of the way technology has affected children and where children get their information. I mean, the whole discussion of apps was fascinating because my little nephews, I think, are better at computer work than anything I can do. And it is true that the kids are becoming much more advanced than maybe even adults. And that's impacting their business and the way they categorize ages. Like, I feel like they're having to change. That must have been fascinating to see highlights kind of trying to figure out where they are for the next generation.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like right when I was following the 70th anniversary issue, they were also going through some of those discussions internally about, how do we don't want to just put a magazine out onto an iPad. We want to be able to sort of deliver that same specialness that the magazine creates through an app. So there's so much thoughtful design that happens with everything that they do. So they may not be the first children's app out there, but when they do actually release this app, it seems so thoughtful and so considerate of the kid that it's, I think that it's perhaps better screen time than other apps. It's funny how, I just really respect this organization, and I didn't know much about them going in. It's funny to have to be a fan of something you're working on, but it's been really refreshing for me as a filmmaker to just enjoy making this film. So
another aspect of it that I was kind of fascinated was how much input they do get from children, and not just the letters getting, which can get very personal and very emotional and very serious, the matters that kids are bringing up, but in their discussions of maybe we should ask the kids if a 70th anniversary is even on their radar. Would they even care? I thought that was fascinating. They went and asked kids, would you care if we told you we were in our 7th year? That must have been fascinating that they are that aware to give children the opportunity to help themselves figure this all out.
Yeah, they go to this local elementary school every week at the same time. A group of kids sits down with them and they kind of just bounce ideas off of them. They try out crafts and different games, and those kids might actually be it's a test group that actually has a big impact on the rest of the kids in the country. So, and I think that just even the letters that kids submit, or they always are putting out like a call, like, tell us your favorite cake, or what's your superhero power that you'd like. And I think getting those kind of that feedback, and also just the Dear Highlights letters where the kids write in and talk about what's on their mind. I think that that's a really big part of their understanding of the audience. So
I think in reading highlights, I never was aware of how aware they are to the multicultural nature of the country. And seeing this film opened my eyes to just how subtle they are in making sure that they cover every type of kid out there. And that must have been really fascinating to see that they're not just thinking of one particular kid out there, but they're thinking of as many possible different variations of children that are in this country. And the multicultural nature of it just kind of opens up everything. I was blown away by that side of it, that they're that thoughtful, and they've been doing it for decades now. They've been thinking about that, and it's reflective. You see it, but it's not in your face. That was fascinating to me. Did you know about any of that, or was that all new to you when you were in that process?
Well, I mean, when I first, 30 years later, I pick up the magazine, I realize it's a very diverse magazine. I look back at the issues that I read as a kid and realize, oh, it was just as diverse back then. You're seeing a lot of cultures, a lot of diversity represented. Even in the first issue, I felt like there was a lot about different cultures in there. And just even during the course of making the film, there was, they were talking about how do we represent a same-sex family in the magazine. And there's a spoiler, I guess, for the film, but they in February of this year, they actually did their first representation of a same-sex family in the magazine, which was pretty bold of them. But again, it's the same thing. They wanted to represent all people in their magazine. They wanted to represent a kid who might have two dads or a kid who might have two moms. And it's just, again, very, very thoughtful consideration about everything they're putting in the magazine.
What was your, not maybe favorite part, but what was the most interesting moment that you had while being there for the 9 months? What moment did you just say, I had no clue about any of this. This is so fascinating.
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I was in a lot of meetings where, they're talking about very, very seriously talking about, a porcupine, or talking about, chenille sticks or whatever sort of craft they're working on. And it's very serious. So I think I think sometimes I'm filming and I'm like, what world am I in? This is such an interesting workplace where they are so focused on some pretty silly things, I guess, but a lot of they're very serious, and they're very professional about it. And I guess that's the thing. If you're working with a magazine for kids 6 to 12, you kind of have to be playful. You kind of have to be in that mindset. So yeah, I think that was one of the surprising things for me. It was just how seriously they take the silliness.
Yeah. I've got to ask, what's it like when you found out you're going to be here at DIF and being able to bring the film to a very different audience than, the Ohio audience that would have a connection directly to, even though I think Dallas audiences and everywhere in the country immediately knows highlights. So that must be, it travels, but getting a Southern audience, do you feel excited that you're going to get to showcase it to, just a different type of people?
Yeah, I mean, that's the great thing about taking a film out on the festival circuit, is that you're going around to a lot of different cities, and this is really my first chance of having, well, I screened up at South by Southwest, and then bringing it to Dallas is, it's a different audience. It's a different group of people that see film here, I would say. I know that Dallas is a very cultured city. That's what I keep hearing, is like there's so much rich culture in Dallas. So, and we're in a category, like a family-friendly category here too. So it'll be I think it's a different group of people that see the film here, as opposed to people who will see it in Cleveland or will see it in Sarasota or whatever festival we have lined up. But ultimately, I think it's great for me to understand and do a Q&A and talk to people and find out what it is that just their feedback. It always helps with the next film, but it's nice also just to know right now how this film will play with different audiences.
Well, can you tell us, where to find out more information about the film, but also where it's going from here? You mentioned a couple film festivals, but are there any thoughts or options to go the public broadcasting or into schools? I mean, is there any of those hopes for you guys with the film?
Yeah, I mean, right now there's a lot of options that are out there for us, and I think that it's an exciting period where right now we're getting, it's just premiering. It's, the baby is like 3 weeks old, so we're putting it out there in the world, and right now you can find out more information by going to our website and kind of and following along with us there. It's 44pages.com, and we're on social. We have a Facebook page and a Twitter account. So that way, everyone at home too can check it out. And we really hope this. I think this is a film that will be able to reach a really wide audience, and I'm looking forward to it. But right now, it's kind of just fun to do these festivals, and it's been great. Today is actually my screening here, so I'm an hour away from that screening. So I'm looking forward to that.
Well, I was amazed watching it. I watched it with my parents to get their opinion, because I remember when they would get highlights for me and my brothers, and their reaction to it is so interesting compared to mine. Oh. I can't wait to see what, not only just family friendly, but adults think of this film, because it does cross 70 years. It's impacting so many generations. Thank you for making this film.
Oh, great. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.